So getting into a little bit about who we are. I'm Donna Trujillo. I'm the Vice President of Special Populations and Tiered Supports at GSN, formerly a Special Education Director for Douglas County School District, which is the third largest district in Colorado. And I have been a classroom teacher, special education teacher, and school administrator in multiple different disciplines and districts and schools in Colorado.
And hi, everybody. I'm Zach Hess. I'm a senior director here with Generation Schools Network. I was also a director with Donna in our school district. I was on the prevention side, so that's my big area of passion. So I was the director of health, wellness, and prevention. So do a lot of work with restorative practices, trauma, this kind of work we're talking about today. I was mainly a middle school guy, so I did most of my teaching and administrating in middle schools here in Colorado. And I started out in youth corrections actually as a special education science teacher. So that was quite the first year of teaching, but it was, I learned a lot, that's for sure. And then prior to that, I was in the military. So I kind of came to education in a little different way. What, CJ?
Hi, I'm CJ Roberts. I am a director at Generation Schools Network. We also have a curriculum side for social emotional learning. I'm the director for empowering education. So you'll see my name on both sides of those if you are interested in anything like that. I'm just happy to be here. I'm going to run the tech side of this. So happy to listen along.
All right, so here's our, as advertised, here's our agenda. We're gonna get into a little bit, learn a little bit about brain development, understanding a little bit more about stress, and then we'll get into some things around how to reduce that stress for you and students, how we increase the engagement, and how we decrease negative behaviors. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll understand how interrelated all of this stuff is, which you probably already know that. And again, we're really looking forward to, hearing from all of you and learning from you too, because everybody here has experience with all of these things. I am absolutely sure of that. First, we're going to do a virtual circle. You need something to write with. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper, we're going to just do a little circle activity here. And you're going to write down your answers. So first prompt is, what is one thing causing you stress? See, I told you, everybody be intimately familiar with the subject we're talking about. What is one thing right now that's causing you some stress? All right. Now let's shift it a little bit. What's one thing you think is causing your students some stress? I think mine is the same, as I just got an email from my son's math teacher about his loveliness in class today. So that's causing me a little stress, and soon to stress my little guy out, I'm sure. So anyway. Middle school, fun. Man. Yeah, everybody. My son is 11, and this is the first year of middle school, and he, mild ADHD, man. Apple didn't fall far from the tree, and I feel for him. Yeah, it's kind of stresses me out a little bit. All right, who would like to share? Like we said, come on, we'd take a couple of people, not everybody, but if a few people want to come off mute and share, that would be awesome. What's something that's causing you stress, and what do you think is causing your students stress?
And you can also drop in the chat box too.
I can kick us off. I'm not working with any students except my own children, but I am dealing with house repairs, including a roof and painting, and our paint will not stick to our house for some reason. So that's causing me stress. And I think that's stressing my kids out because they see me stressed. So it just trickles down the line.
Isn't that amazing? Yes.
Yeah, how that works.
Yeah. How our kids feel that stress of the adults.
Huh. Yeah. My stress is their stress. Yes.
Yes. Who else? Come on. Who wants to share? Remember, Donna and I are both former special ed teachers. We're really good at wait time, like really good.
I'll share.
Thank
I
you.
think one of the things that's causing me stress is a lack of time to do everything that I need to do. I'm an administrator and there is a lot going on right now. So it's just, I'm being pulled in 4,000 different directions. I said there should be at least 6 of me so I can do everything I need to do. I think what the kids are stressing about this year is our class sizes due to, lack of teachers or us being able to get teachers. Our class sizes are very large, and I'm inner city schools, and I just think that that's causing a lot of stress this year with the kids.
Oh man, I'm feel for you. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not easy at all. Isn't it cyclical? Because you like feel the stress of the kids, and then you're like, but I'm a responsible adult, so now I'm more stressed out. It's like,
And then Marlene said she would say money and time for both stress.
right on. Right on. All right. So this is the exercise we like to do with folks. So you shared with us. Now ball it up and throw it across the room. Get rid of that stress. You ever do this with kids? It's kind of fun. If you have a waste paper basket out there or something like garbage can that they can throw, but it's like, yeah, all right. Not that it really gets the stress away, but something about it just feels good to be like, yeah.
There's a good one. Humans not following directions.
Darn humans.
I agree. Students to fulfill their parents' demands. Good one.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So, like we said in the agenda, we want to talk a little bit about brain architecture. I love this word. I love using this terminology of brain architecture, meaning, right, brains are built. And for anybody that's dug into this a little bit, and if you haven't and you're new to this, then this is a great way to really get into this work. I mean, to me, it's fascinating. But we know that brains are built. Like there are sensitive areas at times in neurodevelopment that we're building those synapses and all those connections, right? We got some big times of a lot of them being made, and then there's pruning, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just understanding that these brains of our students, and here's something I want to think. We got an administrator on here, right? And this is something that just, in the last couple of years, I've really thought about is when I have my young teachers in the building, they're under 25. Right? When I get a brand new teacher, unless they're coming maybe out of a master's program or something, it might be, but a young teacher is still a youth. They're still considered a youth. And if you got a male young teacher, that prefrontal cortex, right? It's not fully built until in the mid 20s, about 25. Right. So that's just something to kind of think about when you're as an administrator. And, I always would say is when I was an administrator, I can handle the kids stuff, but god dang, the adult stuff got me. That was what stressed me out, right? But let's look at how the brain is being built. And if we start with a good foundation, right, in early development, then we're gonna start off on a good path, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But just thinking about that, if the early years are rough for our kiddos, and I'm talking like in utero, like if things are rough in that early stages, those sensitive times of brain development, there's going to have an impact because we're building, right? We're building things as we go, and we're building all those connections. If we look at it from both a brain development through 0 to 5 years old, that arrow in the middle, and to what children needs, let's just talk about it this way so we get an understanding of how the brain is working. First off, our kiddos need to know that their needs are being met, right? In utero, they need that, right? When they're born, like when they cry, they've got consultation there. They're indicating that they're hungry, they're being fed. All these things are very important in the neural development. And this is the main priority, obviously, right? These young little babies are trying to survive, and they don't have the other parts of their brain developed to say, yo, I'm hungry. Yo, I'm cold, right? Yay, I'm tired. They're not saying those things. So these other things are going into that. So that's kind of what we want to think about when we're looking at the needs. And so as they go up in age, we've got brain development starting for then moving, right? They have to hold their head up. All these kind of things as parents, we've seen, our kiddos go through. And emotional engagement, right? We start to then be able to emotionally regulate. You notice at a certain age, they're starting to regulate their emotions more, like they can self-soothe, all those kind of things. And then around that age, 4 to 5, we're getting into the cognition and the learning. And that's why we start preschool. That's why you'll start pre-K and those because they're actually able to start understanding colors and numbers and those kind of things. When you look at the brain, those are the different parts of the brain that are being developed during those sensitive times of neurodevelopment. So just kind of an understanding of how the brain is developing. And when things are interrupted, let's say the safety needs aren't being made, the rest of it's delayed, as you can imagine, because they're spending a lot of time developing the neural pathways of being safe. That has to happen first. And then we can get into the next thing, and then the next piece, and then the next piece. That's just kind of how neurodevelopment works. When we're looking at our young kiddos, we're looking at age 5, right? This is a cool thing. 90% of a child's brain development happens before age 5. 90% of it. That's pretty incredible, right? When we think about this, those are the different areas you'll see the different parts of the brain as they're developing. So that early childhood, that 0 to 3, 0 to 5 is one of those sensitive times of brain development where a lot of connections are being made. A lot of synapses are being made. And if things are going well, right, and we're on track, then there's a lot of great things happening. And you can imagine if things are delayed due to adverse childhood experiences, due to a number of other things, then there's going to be some probable delays in some of that parts of the brain development. So just so if you're really curious about all those little things that are happening in the brain, like I think it's pretty cool. This is just kind of a good picture to represent what parts of the brain are when they're developing at this 0 to 5, like what things are being, what's going on, right? So, a lot of part of the cognition there. We're seeing a lot of like visual and hearing and all those kind of things are being developed, like all the things that you need really for school success. So we're talking about education, right? A focus on that right now. Think about brain development and what needs to be happening by age 5. So maybe you in high school, or those of you that are middle school or later elementary, all these things that we need, like we almost take for granted that they have all these things ready to go. And that might be true and it might not be true. The adolescent brain, which is always fun. I have a 14-year-old daughter, now a freshman in high school. And those of you with teenagers and adolescents, this is our start of puberty to mid-20s. Like I said, that mid-20s is when that prefrontal cortex is completely or mostly formed. But this adolescent brain, there's a lot of cool things going on. This is another really time of sensitive brain development. And interesting development. This is a lot of that. Remember, I said 90% of it's going on. A lot of stuff is going on in that early childhood at 0 to 5, and then a lot of synapses going on before puberty. But what happens in the teenage brain is it actually starts to prune and myelinate. Myelinate makes making connections between things, and the pruning is getting rid of things that they don't need, which are like, what? How do they get rid of all of a sudden? Like you're telling me at 14, their brain is like getting rid of pathways? Yes, they are. And because this is really good for development. They're really the things that we're using a lot, we want to keep, right? The brain wants it, and we want to make room for other parts of learning and then maturation, the maturing of the brain. So we get rid of some of those other pathways that they don't need, right? Especially when things are being taken care of. So one of the cool things of the teenage brain, right, is we often notice our teenagers are risk takers, and they want some more autonomy, right? That limbic part of the brain right there where you can see where the hippocampus is in the center of the brain. We call that the emotional center of the brain, the limbic center of the brain. What's going on there? There's a lot of really good stuff going on there for teens making social connections. That you'll tend to find in the research that teens and adolescents will take bigger risks around their friends. And this is all because the reward center is working like really going crazy right now and really developing. And so the risks are, like, they feel good. It's this natural thing. They're getting rewarded for being independent, for going out on their own, for trying things, right? And that's why it's also a dangerous part of the child of their development. If they're not surrounded by, a lot of protective factors, positive people, positive adults and activities, they can get those risks different ways. and so we want to support them. But that's just some of that's things that are happening, and that the what's funny, and it's not really funny, but it's kind of funny that risk-taking center of the brain is really going crazy, where the reasoning, the prefrontal cortex, where all the executive functioning is happening, that's kind of taking a break. So the reasoning isn't there. It's like, let's take this risk. And the other parts of the brain, like, sure, whatever. I'm not really online right now. So yeah, go for it. Take the risk. Right. So you're like, what? It's kind of it's kind of funny, but it's neurotypical. It is what is happening in the brain. It is what is happening with our middle schoolers and high schoolers right now. That's what's going on. When my daughter yells at me and talks back to me and, all those kind of things, I know developmentally it's not fun, but developmentally, I know that's what's going on, right? I know that's part of the brains that are developing, and all those things are at play. So it makes things complicated. I get it. All right. So what I want you to kind of think about this for a second. Like, why is it important to understand brain development? Like, why would we even bring this up and want to talk about this as we're introducing these other subject matters? Think about it for a second, and then if a couple of people would like to share out, that would be awesome. All right. I don't know if people are sharing in the chat, but anyone want to share out? Why do you think it's important? Why do you think understanding brain development might help in these other things that we're going to talk about?
Well, I'll jump in, Zach, because for me, it is being able to know at what point I can interact with a child or a student or even an adult, and knowing, like you said, their past trauma or anything they're dealing with, where their brain development may be. It's so crucial to supporting students. And in special education, we often get the benefit of getting an IQ and being able to see what areas of the brain specifically have developed and what other areas they may be struggling with. So, like for processing or working memory, it's helpful to have that data, but as general educators or administrators or even parents, we don't always get that information. So we can look back on the brain's development to target where the student may be in that development and know if we take a step back, what I'm expecting of them is not developmentally appropriate. Or they should be there, they're not. Maybe there's something that I need to implement to support them in understanding the concept.
Yeah, right on.
We have help. It says help us understand trauma, and then Octavia says it can help tell how we students will process stress. And I think I want to add to that is, additionally, I think when we understand the brain and what students are going through from a chemical or processing or a developmental phase, it gives us the empathy that we need to approach that student. And when you approach them with that empathy and that grace, that's when they soften and recognize, oh, you're really here to help me. You're not here to banter me or make my life harder or anything like that. That's where that softness and that relationship is built. So when we understand the brain, we're not as frustrated. And so we come with empathy.
Oh yeah. I love that, CJ. Yeah, I think that is something I always want to bring to people too, is it feels very personal when there's student behaviors in the classroom. I get that. Like I've been there. Like I understand it. But what helped me understand some of this is not how not to take it personally every time, is that there's just some things going on developmentally and to the trauma point, or there's always that more to that side of the story. And it, I may contribute to it, but it's not always what I'm doing. It wasn't a personal attack on me necessarily, but to maybe the stress or what's going on and where they're at. Right. And so just understanding that there's things going on, especially for our middle school and high school students, that some of that stuff that pushing back wanting to take risks, wanting to engage in riskier behaviors is developmentally appropriate. It's what's going on. And so to figure that out and help guide them as opposed to just getting super angry about it. Right. So yeah. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the different types of stress. I think that's also really important to understand when we talk about reducing stress, and is understanding it. And there's good stress, right? There is positive stress for sure. The stress you feel before, if you were an athlete and you feel before a competition, right? It gets you a little motivation, right? The stress of, meeting new people, maybe, right? There's a little kind of like stress in that, but understanding how to get through that. That's positive stress. The anxiety, maybe if it's manageable before test taking or before some of those cognitive demands in the classroom, if they're not overwhelming, they can be positive. They can motivate you to like really focus and get going. So there's definitely positive stress. There's tolerable stress. And what we mean by tolerable stress is there are things in life that happen that are big deals. Death in the family could be one, like this image talks about. There are some big things that are loss of a job in the family, moving, some of these kind of things that can be big stress, and they are tolerable, but they're tolerable when they have, for students, for youth, when they have adults around them that are able to cope positively with that stress, to help them through that stress, to help them understand that stress, right? To be there with them, to help them regulate during that stress and just support them through it. So then that becomes tolerable. Then we have the toxic stress, and toxic stress is the dangerous stress. That is the stress that really impedes neural development. We're going to watch a video and it explains a little bit more about that. But when you have those stress hormones in your body constantly, and from a very early age, right, it delays the brain development, that architecture of the brain, the building of the brain. It interrupts that building of the brain when you have these sorts of stressors. And I think this is really important. This isn't we'll do a whole thing on trauma-informed schools work, but this is important to understand in ourselves. If these are the things that we experienced as children, as young people, that it did have an impact in our brains. I can tell you that by my experiences. And so recognizing that some things trigger us, we might not have the best coping mechanisms for stress because of some of these things that happened to us as when our brains were developing. And I think that's empowering to understand that. And I encourage you to dig more into that if you can, because I think it does help us understand our own response to stress. But just realizing that toxic stress is not good. Constant stress about in the classroom, bullying, too much going on, like just whatever's on the outside, then they come to school and they have it. That is not going to help in the brain development for sure. All right. So, So from an educator's perspective, when we think about this, as an adult, right? Positive stress, new school year, it's still early September right now, new content, new teams, new students. Some of that can be really positive. I was always super excited to see what kind of, students I was going to have in my class. Like, new content, I changed things around. Like, it was stressful. Yeah, but it was fun. It was kind of exciting. Right. And so that was some positive stress. Tolerable stress. Yep. Things that we're talking. I don't know, Marianne, if it's tolerable. I hope it's still tolerable. I hope you have good coping strategies and self-care strategies that keep it tolerable. But yes, right. Angry parents, challenging students, staff death. I mean, we have these kind of big deals that hit us in schools, and they're hard. But if we have supportive adults and peers around it, we're engaging in good self-care type of things, and our leaders are on top of it in the schools and understanding that these are big deals, it can be tolerable. Toxic stress, and we know this from our educators, and this is why I bring this up, is educator stress is at an all-time high. It has been for a number of years. In 2014, educators were the most stressed out. They were tied as the most stressed profession in the United States. Nurses and teachers. 2017, teachers surpassed that. 2022, way surpassed that as the most stressed profession in the United States. Okay, so that's saying something, right? We have a highest burnout. We have the lowest staff keeping our staff, with us. We have the highest rates of turnover. hard to get teachers into the profession, hard to keep them in the profession. This is all because there's a lot of toxic stress happening right now. It's constant, and our coping mechanisms aren't keeping up. So we need to be aware of that. If you're in on this, you're learning professional development, it's huge. That's one of the big things that can help us cope with stress. Like we feel like we're doing stuff for our own confidence level. It's great. So keep doing that. Keep learning. Keep trying. Right. All right. This is the video we're gonna get on this. Let's see. Hopefully it all works really well.
I need to find the best way to learn math and science.
It's brilliant.org.
Whoa. Okay, there we go. Everybody good? You can hear it? Good?
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions.
Volume is too low.
Genes. Stress begins with something.
Hey, Zach, push pause real quick.
Pituitary adrenal axis.
Because I'm not sharing, we're listening to the audio through your speaker. So go to the screen share and click that caret that's at the very bottom of your, or wherever your controls are. And there should be an option to share audio.
Huh.
If it's not there, hit the three buttons to your right that says more, and hopefully it's there.
Share computer sound.
Yep, that's it.
Password. Okay.
Oh, great.
Can I remember the right one?
A series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do is going to do a breakout. So you all can talk about some of the connections you made from that video. There's a lot in there as like a 5-minute video, but there's a ton of stuff in there. And it goes pretty quick, but just think about stress, the effects on the brain, the effects of your body, all that they talked about, and how it is being an educator and what it is for your students. What are they experiencing, and how how do we look at that together as like all of us trying to reduce that chronic and toxic stress. So, all right, CJ is going to put us in a breakout. And we're going to do the breakout for about 10 minutes.
And don't be surprised if Zach and I pop in and out.
Yes. Okay. Do you hear me better now? I just unclicked that computer sound. I don't know.
I don't think it changes any of your speaker or your microphone. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody's gone?
Some may not be able to click on it because they might be driving.
Yeah, if you're driving, that's totally understandable.
Zach, do you want to take odd and I'll take even?
Sure. That sounds good. Now I got to remember how we do that.
Click on your break.
Yeah. Mine is in my ... more for some reason.
Yeah. I think mine too. It says breakout rooms unassigned.
Yep, and then you just click on the one you want to join.
Yep. Okay.
It used to be able to give me a time to close it, but I don't see that. So I'll just close I'm just gonna close the rooms at 4:44.
Perfect.
Yeah, 4:44.
That'll be great.
Okay.
All right.
So in the breakout room, Zach, I heard a lot of great discussions. The ones that I worked on, a lot about focus, needing to know and identify what students need. Sometimes they're just stressed because they had a bad morning. And if you take the time to check in with them and help them calm down, they'll have a better day rather than going throughout their day with nothing. And then also having stress ourselves. What are we transferring to our students when we're stressed? But also teaching them when we're stressed, calling it out, and being able to work through and show them how you're working through that stress. And if you need a minute because you're stressed, call it out. I need a minute, and talk them through what you're doing to calm yourself.
Yeah, I think, I heard just this common, like, that's why we're here. We need strategies. This is happening a lot. There's a lot of things going on. We understand how these kids are being impacted by brain development and those behaviors coming into the class, causing us stress. And then we had a little talk about just that systems approach, like schools can't solve it all. And so it has to be a community approach, and figuring out what's the role of the school, what can we handle at the school, and then how do we involve partners in the community to help, because it's in some of these really impacted communities. They were sharing, like Marianne's community in Cleveland, like these are very impacted communities with generational trauma, and so that's hard. And so it's not, the schools aren't going to solve it by themselves. That's kind of where we got that. So,
and you all are free to jump in or share in the chat any other thoughts. So you can see with engagement comes a lot of foundation building. We think of the word engagement, and many of us think of it as students listening to the teacher doing their work in chairs, but we don't always look at the foundation of engagement. And in order to have that foundation, we have to provide students with the skills. Not all of them come to us with this, and through what Zach shared with brain development, as we learn, as we grow, these foundational skills come into play. And until you have the foundational skills, it's difficult to get to the next point. So one of the best foundation builders that we feel at GSN and research and science have proven is that trusted adult, right? That Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And how do we do that? Through building those relationships in a safe and positive community, teaching those foundational social emotional learning skills, and then providing support for those students when they're stressed, giving them strategies and tools. And we'll be sharing some of those with you, in empowering students and ourselves to regulate and learn and be vulnerable and model. Don't just throw it off to the side and say, that's not my problem. It's a community approach. And if we can build community within a classroom with that foundation of trust, and a student can identify a trusted adult, that's number one thing. And the rest we can build on from there. And again, just going back to social emotional learning, the castle wheel of social emotional learning, where does stress fall into this? And we can find stress in each of these categories, but Zach and I did talk about two specific that we are going to further discuss today to give some parameters and kind of unpack some ideas of what we can do for our students and for ourselves. So first, self-awareness, the abilities to understand one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they have influenced behavior across contexts. So it's how we experience our emotions. How do we deal with that adversity? And how do we interact with others across that continuum? And so with that self-awareness, when we are looking at a student, they may not be able to express how they're feeling. They may not even know how they're feeling. And if they can understand first how they're feeling, then we can get to the why they're feeling that way, link those feelings together, and then teach them the skills. And when Zach and I were preparing for the conversation today, we talked about how when we're developing IEPs for students, if a student needs a social emotional goal, so many of the IEPs I've seen, I'd say almost all of them in my career that have a social emotional goal, the first step is for the student to learn to identify their feelings. Next is why they're feeling that way. And then next is skills. So we often use rubrics in special education to support this, but it's not a special education component only. It takes everyone doing that. And special ed is a tier 2, tier 3 intervention that can support students. However, all of the adults in the school building are responsible for creating that self-awareness. And what we know more than anything is routines work. So things like journaling, and we mentioned it in the chat room that I was in, how one of our participants today actually had students come in, rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 10 of how stressed they were, and then write down why they were stressed. And then after that, did breathing and stretching activities. And one day she forgot, and the class was a mess, and she realized, oh my gosh, we didn't do our quiet activity. And the students right away got up, turned out the lights, and wanted to do it. So things like journaling, visual thinking routines, taking that mindful moment, doing that morning circle, checking in to see if everyone had breakfast or dinner the night before, or if they had trouble getting to school, or if somebody's sick. And some of the great examples here are a feelings wall. So of course, you don't just jump in first day, put up a feelings wall, but you set up the skill by talking about feelings, having students identify emotions, and they can even pick emotions that they want to identify each day. And I love the visuals too. And then when they come in, they can just place on the chart where they're at that day. That gives you an immediate signal for who might be struggling. And also, you can do it quickly. You can just have them get up as a transition or a break and say, okay, let's see how everybody's feeling now. Or how are you feeling about this? Another great strategy is that emotion wheel. Zach shared with me that he does this every day. He works to identify the emotion, and the hardest part is identifying the emotion, and then journaling. That's another way you can do journaling. Yeah.
It's really, I'm an adult and I'm like, no one taught me how to this. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm at right now this morning, but I'm somewhere. I use a wheel like that. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm close to that. It's hard.
Yeah. And you can put these in your students' desks and have them pull it out and start conversations. And yes, name it to tame it. Very first step of reducing stress, anxiety, any part of our day. Name it to tame it. And then the next one we picked out is self-management. The abilities to manage one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations and to achieve goals and aspirations. So I like to think about this like flexible thinking, being adaptive, having the tenacity to persevere. But we have to be able to manage our emotions. We also need to teach our students the executive functioning. Set them up for success. If you give them a large project, rather than just saying, here, do this, give them an exemplar example and then backward plan with them. What are you going to do first? What are you going to do next? And do those checks in between. That can help them with that self-management, help their emotions stay calm, and teach them those important executive functioning skills that are not automatic. They're part of that human cognitive brain development. And we think these things are just come to us. They don't. It's through practice and modeling. And one of our favorite things to do, both Zach and I as teachers and administrators use this all the time, is that creating a calm down space. So doesn't have to be a large space, but you can even use it yourself. Make it comfortable, make it where there's activities. You can have sensory tools, puzzles, art, drawing. They can have journals there, snacks, water for those that maybe just need that minute. You can also set a timer for students or they can self-set a timer so that it gives them time to calm and they know that there's a time limit and they're not allowed to stay in there for a long time. It can be quiet. You can have music, whatever works. Have multiple strategies. And another great idea, which Zach, I'm going to have you share because you implemented it in your school, is that home base.
Yeah. So at tier 2, and can be tier 3, but a tier 3 is like just a space in your building. It doesn't have to be a place. It's really, it's not just a space. It's just a support for students, but just an ability to get out of the classroom. And there's a lot of work that goes into this, but it's just creating that space where they can get out of that environment, that classroom, and they can go to a space or an adult. Usually the space has the adult, but if you don't have space, I get it. And you can just go to this adult, but you have a place where you can be, you can manage these emotions. You can use strategies. There's someone there that understands you. So they see Zach coming in. They already know what Zach has difficulty with, and they know some strategies because they've worked with Zach to help him and teach him. And they know what he might want to do and what could work, and providing that space, providing that adult supervision so they can do it safely has really paid big dividends for the schools I was in to just give them that time. And we made a goal of 10 minutes. So they would be out of class 10 minutes. And it was a lot better than a room clear. It was a lot better than just really stressing out a student to the max to try to make them do something that emotionally and cognitively they were not in a place for. And it helped teach them to recognize, again, the self-awareness, and then using that as a strategy for self-management, to be able to just advocate for themselves and say, I gotta go do this. And they go do an effective strategy. Bam, they're back in the classroom, ready to learn in 10 minutes. It's really cool work. It takes some time, but it's good stuff.
And now we have a question for you. If you can drop this into the chat box, how do you know if students are engaged? What are some ways that you can tell if students are engaged? And you can also unmute too, if it's easier for you. Active participation. Absolutely, that interaction. Maybe just a lot of us look at it as, oh, they're paying attention to me, but are they actively participating? Are they interacting? Eye contact. Yep, body language, leaning forward and making eye contact. Smiles. When they remember and apply something from an earlier lesson or day in a new context.
Nice.
More interaction and eye contact. All right, well, let's dig into this, Zach. So we have what I see, what in the chat is the observable engagement. Those behavioral and academic components are those observable engagement. Something we often forget about, or maybe aren't even aware of, is that internal engagement. So what that looks like is the cognitive. We don't necessarily know what they're thinking inside, what their perceptions are, what are their personal goals, what are their aspirations, and how do they feel about school? Are they sitting there because they have to, or because their mom made them go to school that day, but they hate it, but they're just trying not to get the call or the email that Zach got today, and trying to do their best to focus, not really able to do the observable engagement of processing because they're so focused on trying to look like they're engaged. And also that affective, right? Do they have that sense of belonging? Do they want to be in school? Do they even connect with the subject that they're trying to learn? So as teachers, we need to remember that there's the observable, what we can see. We need to get to know our students so we don't miss that hidden engagement. And how do we increase engagement? Of course, like we've said, relationship building, number one, okay? Supporting their stress management. Movement is great. Get up and let them stretch or do the chair sit-ups. Let them go get a quick drink of water. Or, you know what, I've had my class, you know, guys, let's put our books aside. Let's go take a walk outside. Or if it's snowing, let's do a quick lap around the school. Getting their brains moving, getting that energy back. It helps us as adults. We need to remember that for students. That autonomy. When we talk about autonomy, it's not, oh, they get to do whatever they want, but letting them have some choice and voice, or sharing with you how they feel about doing that assignment. If you ask them, what do you think about this assignment? Listen, they may have, and then you can always ask, what would be a better way? They have some great ideas. Having those high expectations, and of course, again, that community building, a layered continuum of supports. It's not just because a student has an IEP, that's a special education provider's problem, or the principal needs to take care of this behavior. Let's figure out how we can do it as a community. All right, we have an interview question for you right now. And we're actually going to give you 15 minutes in a breakout room. I think we have 15 minutes. Yes.
I think we better go 10 in the breakout. 10? So we have time to share.
All right, we're going to do 10 minutes in this breakout room. This is a big question. It doesn't look like it might be, but it is. Is it important for students to like you? Why or why not? So we're going to break into our breakout rooms again, unpack this question, and yes, we will be sharing out when we get back. 10 minutes.
We're going to come back at 5:10.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
Also, make sure you stick around. We forgot to say this because we have a survey for you to fill out at the end. And if you complete that survey, you get a certificate of completion to use toward your continuing education hours.
Oh, I feel like, these forums are awesome. I love all the conversations, but they're so quick. Like we cover so much. I hope that you guys stay engaged with us, and I hope at one point we can partner more with GSN and in helping you, because there's some big time conversations. So it's hard. I don't know about you, Donna, but we had a really good conversation about that, about if they, if kids like you, what that matters. I don't know. When I was administrator and I was hiring people, that was one of my trick questions, because I was always like, yeah, it matters that they like you. But there's that fine line. Like we were talking in our group, it's not like I'm going to friend you on Snapchat or Instagram or that's not what I'm saying. I'm not your buddy. There's boundaries. I'm the teacher. I'm still the authority in the classroom. Right? But I hope that you like me because I am treating you with dignity. We had a big discussion too around dignity and respect. And how that plays out when you look at kids with adverse childhood experiences, when adults have definitely not respected the kid and they've really harmed children. That kiddo is not going to respect adults, right? There's a huge barrier there, and that understanding comes, I think, in this work after you get into this work and learn about that. So I understand why people say, hey, they have to respect me. And then you think about these kids that have been abused and you're like, I doubt they respect you, because every adult in their life has failed,
Yeah, we talked about how, you want the kids to like you, but they don't like you just to like you. You have to establish that trust and that respect, and also treat it like a family unit. You may not like your family members, but you're not going anywhere, right? So let's get through this together. And even Davina said, even though we're struggling, no matter what happens, I still love you. And that's important too. And Roberta and I were talking about how students do need to like you, but you need to take the pressure off yourself of wanting them to like you, and flip it into, I'm going to work with my students to develop a trusted relationship. And eventually that respect will come, and keeping those high expectations in place.
Yeah. I really feel like we were all kind of on the same page, but the semantics of some of the words, it's like, I think the mindset and then the heart, we all knew it, but we use those words, and we get in the habit of using some of those words sometimes. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, if I dig into that a little bit, I might shift my mindset a tad, so I love that.
Great journal for kids. What does liking someone mean?
Right. All right. Okay. We're hustling. Oh, look at that. We're even on time. Kids do well if they can. Who all knows Ross Green? Because I love Ross Green's book. He's got a couple of them out there, but Lost at School is a good one. It is this philosophy that kids do well if they can. I believe people do well if they can. And if they're not, that means something's getting in the way. I truly believe there's such a small percentage. We barely run into these kids, but I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to make Mr. Hess's life hell today in class. I can't wait. Right. I don't believe that that's what's going on. I feel like when something, they want to do well, they want to come and be engaged. They want to not have stress. They want to not disrupt and get yelled at and go to the principal's office and I think they want that. And if they're not, we need to figure out what's getting in their way. And so a lot of that is some work we have to do, right? Decreasing negative behaviors. If we're going to decrease negative behaviors, we have to really dig in and find out what is the root cause, right? I feel like I feel like in education, at least in my experiences in the buildings I've been a part of, and ones I've taught in, we did such a good job of identifying deficits. Like we were deficit minded, like kids not at reading level, kids not at the math level. There's this deficit, and we were like, oh, we better jump in on this academic stuff and really get this taken care of. He's not at the right level or whatever, and we do that. I don't think we do as good a job for our students with ALPs, our advanced learners. I don't. I wish we would do a better job at that, because that's another group. And I don't think we do a really good job when we're talking about behaviors, right? And we don't dig in like we would do with assessments to assess where is it in math that they are not doing well? Why is it that this kiddo is not at grade level with whatever math concepts we're talking about? And we dig into those, and we're like, oh, this is why. Oh, that's it. That's the lagging skill he has. We have to do the same thing with behavior. And if we want to decrease negative behaviors, we have to figure out what the root cause is and what the lagging skills are, so that we can build the lagging skills. Collaborative problem solving, if you are a Ross Green fan, that's what he talks about, is working with the kiddos, with the students, as a team, and figuring out with them what is going on, what are the root causes, what are the lagging skills, and let's work together. Okay, in a behavior situation, a lot of this, we're talking about these different plans, right? We can try to impose adult will, right? And sometimes that's what we do. We get in this, and if it's a safety issue, that's not what I'm talking about. A safety issue, we jump in right away and we create safety. But when it's not, and we're frustrated or whatever, it's disrupting the classroom, we feel like that we're going to impose the will. And I would charge, and what Ross Green would tell you is that's not going to be very effective. What you can do with some behaviors is we get plan A is not our option. Plan B is what we're going for, but oftentimes we have to go to plan C, which for right now, we need to drop it because this kid's not regulated. We get negative behaviors because that window of stress tolerance has now been exceeded. It's too much stress. There's too much going on, and they have now entered into a different part of their brain, right? And if it's a child with adverse childhood experiences, they're now in their survival brain. They are in neural pathways that have been developed for survival. So it's not a conscious decision. It is just what you do. It's like if you see something that looks like a rattlesnake on a trail, you jump. You don't like check it out for a while and figure out, is that a rattlesnake? No, first you like jump the heck out of the way, and then you look to see if that's what's going on there. And so you'll get these dysregulated negative behaviors. And the best thing to do at that time, if it's not a safety issue, is to let it go, right? Hopefully you have some structured supports in there and how to help that kid be able to get regulated again. And then when they're regulated and they're back in the cognitive part of their brain, right? If Dan Siegel's wizard lizard brain, you flip the lid. I don't know if many people are into that part of Dan Siegel's work with the brain. But once you flipped your lid, the cognitive part of it offline, and we're in survival brain, there's no cognition. We're not thinking. We got to wait till we're regulated. We got to wait till the cognitive part of our brain comes back online, and we can start to talk about how can we tackle this, right? Like that behavior is not okay. And that's how, I feel like that is just a much better plan to decrease it, because then we're starting to get to the root cause. Then we're starting to figure out those lagging skills and actually develop a plan to build the lagging skills.
Well, and I always like to start those collaborative conversations with identifying strengths, because a lot of you can identify a student's strengths, that is your solution to counteracting the negative behaviors. Even what do they enjoy? What are they wanting to do? And knowing those things, not forgetting those things, what's good about the student first, because then it sets the stage for the conversation. But then you can, when you're talking about strategies, leverage those strengths and positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. And like Zach and I talk about his son, what is he looking for when he's acting out? He's looking for a reaction from the kids and the teacher, because he's maybe deflecting because he doesn't understand, right? So if the teacher were to actually positively interact, give him some kudos, give him some positive reinforcement, then he would start performing. and get to know each other.
And, maybe utilize the strategies that are in this 504 is helpful also.
Yeah.
Because I've done the work for them to identify the lagging skills and some strategies. Anyway, so if we look at this really with adult interaction, what I talk about in this with box, I love that quote, right, from Ted Watchell. This is my passion of restorative practices and restorative work, and this is where this comes from. But I think we're all happier as beings if those who are in a position of authority are doing things with us, right? If my boss includes me, interacts with me, wants my feedback, wants to engage with me, then I am there, right? I'm ready to participate. If not, and they're just doing things to me, that's not super fun. You guys know this. Anybody that's been in education long enough understands to, and we don't like to, right? We've seen a lot of to us, and that is just kills our motivation and adds an extreme amount of stress. Okay, so that's why we don't want to be in that box. We want to reduce stress, we want to increase engagement, we want to decrease negative behaviors, right? Those are all interrelated things. We can do that by being in the with box. We can do that by setting high expectations, right? We want them to achieve, and a kiddo wants to know that you believe in them, that you expect them to achieve high things. I mean, that's important, right? For their own self-value. And so we want to have those high expectations, but we got to do that with the supports they need. So if people are expecting my son to behave at a high level in the classroom, engage at a high level cognitively, well, then they need to figure out what is going on and give them the supports necessary, not just email the dad and think I'm going to solve it, right? It needs to be, what are we doing together? What is that teacher doing with my son to collaboratively look at what's going on and explain that behavior is not okay and not acceptable, right? But what do you need from me? And let's work together to figure that out. Oh, maybe changing seats instead of being in the front of the classroom, so you're turning around looking at your friends and disrupting the class. Maybe you need to be in the back of the classroom so you can stand up because you have ADHD, right? And you need to move, and it's the end of the day and it's a struggle, right? Some of those kind of things. The brain state is important. Look at that. When we are as adults in the classroom with students and we're with them, right? We're doing things with them authentically. They are relaxed, they're alert, they're curious. That's engagement. And they're ready to learn. They're with you, and they're ready to be there, right? That is a place that is inclusive. It's restorative. They're going to mess up. How do we restore relationships? How do we repair the harm that was done? Because you know what? They're still kids and they don't have very many tools in the toolbox. So things are going to still happen no matter how awesome you are. Again, try not to take it personally. It's just developmental. They're going to mess up. And that's part of where we can do in the with box. We can hold them accountable for behaviors. We can talk to them about it. We can collaboratively look at what do they need in the class? What can they get from me? And I understand, I know there's all kinds of barriers, things. And I was at a conference just the other day and they talked about hurdles. We know there's hurdles and we got to jump over. Well, how do we jump over them, right? We know time is a hurdle. I get it. It's not an insurmountable barrier. It's a hurdle. How do we jump over the time to connect with our kids, right? Like in that kind of a manner. It's difficult. I'm not going to lie. I know that. But it's a hurdle that we can jump over. The number of kids in a classroom, space in the building, demands on our job, the kids, the trauma that our kids are going through in the community that are coming. We know they're hurdles. We're running a race and we know they're there. So how are we going to jump over those hurdles? Because we know they're coming, but they're not insurmountable barriers. So for
the adults and the administrators. So Zach and I worked in that big public school district, and it was very stressful because it felt like a lot of times things were being done to us. But then we came on with Generation Schools Network, and now everything is done together. Our administrators, our CEO, our CFO, they don't do it to us. They make decisions with us. And they ask us, what are your thoughts on this? Or we get an idea. Okay, you can explore that further. What can we do to support you with that? Flipping that as administrators for our staff too can help reduce that stress for them.
Absolutely. All right. So good segue into this. Oh, go. Yes. Go ahead, Kat.
I was just thinking, I'm a school counselor, and when I'm working with my kids with IEPs, we're now kind of moving when we do behavior plans to have the kiddos help us develop the plan. So typically in the past, we would create a behavior plan to the kid, and now we're enrolling the kid to create a behavior plan with the kiddo. And we're just seeing such a huge difference in outcomes.
It works. Yep. See, Kat's right there. It works. Good job.
I have a story to share to piggyback on that. I'm an advocate on the outside of all of this for students with special and gifted needs. And with all my parents and my families I work with, I tell them, let's bring the students. We'll meet, you know, as with a parent and talk to them about what's going on. And if at all possible, I always try to sit down with my student and the parents and share what we learned and talk to the student before we go into a meeting about what they hope to see, what they want. And then if they're able, bring them in. And I got a text message from one of my former clients the other day saying, Donna, you were right. When our daughter understood how her brain worked and she now is involved in the conversations and the meetings, she's self-advocating for herself. She's asking for things she needs and she's telling them why. And it's changed her whole world to the point where she got inducted into the National Honor Society today. Oh, and wow. So just knowing that they have people with them and that they have a voice and choice in what happens to them can change a child's whole outlook on life and trajectory for the rest of their life.
So, oh my gosh. So anyway, we want to share all this stuff. We want to work with you. That's the next step. Stay connected. We really love, that's GSN's goal, is to come alongside schools to help you. If this is something that's resonating with you, this is something like we would love to do more work on this. It is impossible to do all of this in an hour and a half forum, guys. I mean, like this is huge work. We're talking systems change. We're talking lots of stuff that needs to go on. That's what our expertise is. That's what we want to do. Please reach out to us if that all. We have different funding models. I mean, if you have money in your general fund, awesome. We also work to get grants to write grants and co-create those grants and those opportunities to use that funding to help. So there's a lot of creative ways. We just like to just start that conversation.
And we also feel free to email Zach and I at any time.
Anytime. Yes, please do. CJ is our empowering education expert. So yeah, she could talk more about this part, but we do have a curriculum for SEL curriculum. And I circled all this stuff. Like if you were going to teach students some of this stuff for the advocacy to help increase engagement, reduce stress and negative behaviors in your classroom, these are awesome lessons.
Thanks, Zach. I'll go really fast because we have 2 minutes, but I didn't know Zach did that. So that's awesome. If you guys, I put the link in a couple times in this for this presentation, so you can look at those. But we do have a social emotional learning curriculum. We have so many ways to connect, help you connect with your students and build relationships and just kind of build that understanding, that empathy, that growth. So if you have any questions, I'm going to throw some information into the chat, and you guys are welcome to reach out to me as well. We can kind of go through what you guys are feeling and go from there. So no matter what your position or your level or whatever in a school district, we're here to help you, and we have resources and all sorts of stuff. So please reach out.
Yes, and please fill out this survey.
Yep, and that's how we get your CEU credit, your certificate. So take a moment, you can screenshot it and use the QR code, or you can, CJ's going to drop the link to fill it out. You don't have to fill it out now, or you can do it. It's best to do it now because then you don't forget. And one last thing, your stress bucket. But if you fill this out, we will send you the materials along with your certificate of participation. And also, Zach and I and the rest of our team review these after every forum to create our next forums and to adjust how we approach them. So we do value what you have to tell.
Yes, please give us your honest feedback. It really helps us. All right.
You're welcome to stay and fill out the survey. You're welcome to jump off. Just thank you for taking the time and spending your time with us. We so value these and love doing this. It's our favorite part of our day.
Yes. Ask questions, y'all. Like we'll stay on for a little bit if you have some questions. Seriously.
Thank you so much, everyone.
See you, Jason. By the way, I think I was the winner of the numbers. Just saying.
Oh, what was it?
It was about 22.
Go, Zach.
Go, Zach.
Right. Next time we're putting a wager on this.
Yep. No, then I'll lose though, because I can't gamble.
All right, you get to drive to Los Animas. No.
That's fair.
No, I don't. I'm teasing.
I know.
Oh, Davina, thank you so much. Davina uses Empowering Ed. She says it's awesome.
Yay!
Oh, very cool.
I do. I love it, actually. We've been using it for a few years now. I'm a school counselor, so I'm kind of in charge of the social emotional learning. And I was joking around when I was in one of the breakout rooms that I'm not a teacher at all. Like undergraduate was psych. My master's was in, clinical mental health. And then I did my master's in school counseling. So it's all just that way. So nothing with lesson plans, and that's not my strong suit. So this is great because it gives you everything that you need in just such a convenient way. And it lets me kind of put my own spin on, the lesson for what I know our kids need, but yet the framework is just there and perfect. So it's great. It really is.
Are we recording this, CJ?
Yes.
Because we need to type out this testimony.
Yeah, Davina, would you be okay if we use that to just kind of share how people feel? Because that's exactly how I feel. My background is not in classroom teaching. And sometimes I feel like my experiences on the other side do support that. And so with Empowering Education, the ability to kind of build in your other expertise is so available. And that's exactly how I use it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's great. It really is. I love it. And the kids respond to it. It's really adorable because like my babies, like I have kindergarten through 8 in my school. I'm the only school counselor. Great. So I have K through 8. And it's so funny because the littles are always like, they'll see me and they stop me in the hallway. Mrs. Roche, are we going to see Munchie and Jumpy? And like they, they look for it, which is, it's awesome. It's heartwarming. It's a great program. And I absolutely love it.
Oh, Davina, thank you so much for that feedback.
No, you're welcome. We're actually, I said to my vice principal today, I'm like, do you know, did Tom Trevor send in like that? We sent them the PO. I'm like, I'm supposed to go in next week and start these classes. I need my Empowering Ed. She's like, everything went in. I'm like, okay, it's like my lifeline, when I have to go do this stuff. So it's great.
Well, Davina, I run all of that, so I will go in right now and make sure you're good to go and you won't lose access. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it is. It's great. I use it like I have K to 8, so we use it for everybody. I mean, and that's some great. Of the lessons, because they're so like everything is like laid out so nicely. I mean, I can even like jump off on things. Like I know like our older kids, our middle school, they love like those Pixar short films. Yep. So like there's stuff on like decision making is one of the lessons, and I can go and find like a cute Pixar film on on decision making or conflict management. There's like 2 bears on a bridge and that I add that as like an extra. It's easy for me, but it brings meaning for them. Yeah, it works out really well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Yay, CJ.
I know. That's was awesome. So good. I'm so excited to show Bitsy. She's going to love that.
Yes,
and that was worth your time.
She's our marketing person. That was totally worth it.
All right. We have some people we have Kat, Kathleen, and LaRue. Do you guys have a question or anything? Or are you just hanging out with us?
Kat had some great comments in the chat.
Yeah, she did.
I think we're good. All right, guys.